Doesn't matter whether you have a business, a company, an agency, an institute, everyone has a logo and every logo requires a logo animation, and that is exactly what we will be creating today. Hey guys, what's going on? I am Nikhil from dopemotions.com and welcome to this brand new After Effects tutorial. In today's video, we will try to create a nice, smoky, majestic looking logo animation in After Effects. So it doesn't matter if you are very new to After Effects or if you are a professional. I will be going over through many different effects and it's going to be really fun and interesting. So I hope you will learn something new today. Before we jump into the tutorial, I would like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Graphic Design Gear. Graphic Design Gear is a relatively new YouTube channel. They make tutorials for Photoshop, Illustrator and CorelDRAW, and I have seen the channel. They have some really interesting and unique tutorials, so I highly recommend you guys to go ahead and check them out. The link will be down in the description box below. So with that said, let's jump into After Effects and get started. Alright, so here we are in After Effects. Let's start by creating a new composition, which is going to be our main comp. So let's call this main. 1920 by 1080, 25 fps and 10 seconds long. Hit OK. Then let's create one more composition, which is going to be our logo placeholder. So I'm going to call this logo here, so I can drag and drop any logo anytime and it's going to get replaced instantly. So let's drop in the logo. You can use, of course, use any logo that you want. I'm going to use my logo just like so. Maybe let's set this to 16. Okay, then let's create one more composition, which is going to be our logo reflection. So let's call this logo underscore ref for reflection. Hit OK, and then I can drop the logo year composition into the logo reflection comp. Then again, I'm going to create a new composition, which is going to be our reflection. So let's call this ref for reflection and hit OK. Now we can go ahead and start creating our reflection. So firstly, I'm going to hit Ctrl Y on the keyboard to create a new solid and call this FN for fractal noise. Hit OK. And I'm going to use fractal noise on this and increase the contrast to around 115 and maybe bring down the brightness a little, like maybe -3 or something like that. Then go into the transform and let's scale this up to around 150. And for the complexity, I'm going to go with 3. So we have this really weird look, and that is actually what I'm going for. And for the evolution, I want this to keep on evoluting just like that. So I'm going to hold Alt and click on the stopwatch, and then I can add an expression like time into 30. So the evolution is going to keep animating just like so. It's very minimal and subtle. Okay, so that is what I'm going for. Then let's add a fast blur to this, because the fractal noise looks a bit choppy. So I'm going to add a fast blur and let's keep it at around 50 and repeat edge pixels. Now to make it a bit more darker, what I could do is I could use a really unused effect called the HDR compounder. So I can increase this to around maybe 2. Now I cannot make it darker by using or by actually bringing down the opacity, because then it will create a transparency and I don't want that. You can compress the range or expand the range, or you can just bring down the brightness, use the curve, but I just like to do it this way. So that is that, and let's create one more solid, and this is going to be our reflection. So let's call this a reflection. Actually, many things are going to be a reflection, so I'm just renaming them, but you can obviously rename as per your liking. And on this layer, I'm going to set the blending mode to add. Then I'm going to use a really cool effect called cell pattern, which is a very cool effect. You can do different number of things using this effect. So I'm just going to type in cell pattern. Let's set the cell pattern to crystal. We have different number of presets, or you can, so you can play around and have fun with this. But for this particular project, the crystal works pretty good, and I'm just going to invert this. For the contrast, I'm going to increase this to around maybe 280 or something like that. And for the disperse, I can disperse it any way that I want. So I'm just going to leave it at a random maybe 1.5 or something like that. And then for the size, let's actually play around with it a bit. So I'm going to set this to around, let's go with something like 254 looks good, or maybe a bit like that. And then what I can do is I'm going to go to around 2 seconds, create a keyframe on the offset, go to 3 seconds and offset it a little bit, just like so. So hit U so we can see all the keyframes. Select the keyframes and just click right over here. If I go into the graph editor, so I'm basically creating a peak graph. So if I just select this, you can see very cool. Now this is a free script. I'll provide the link down in the description to Animation Composer, and with Animation Composer we get the free keyframe wingman, which makes it really easy for messing around with the graph editor. So I highly recommend you guys to go ahead and check it out. You can also do this manually, but it is pretty easy to just select this and tweak it like so. So around 85. So we have this really simple animation. All right, maybe I'll set it to 315, I think. So we have this really simple animation. Then for the evolution, I'm going to use the same expression. So hold Alt and click on the stopwatch, time into 30. So it's going to keep on evolving just like so. Pretty simple. I think 30 is a bit too much for this, so let's go with 25. Okay, pretty nice. And then what I'm going to do is let's go to 2 seconds, select both the layers and hit S to bring up the scale properties, create a keyframe, drag those keyframe at the very beginning. Actually, let's leave it right there. Go at the very beginning and let's scale this up to maybe 150. So we have a really simple scale animation. All right. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Then what I can do is select the reflection layer and add some more effects to this. So first of all, I'm going to add a luma key. And let's set this threshold. So this is going to help us to make the shapes a bit more sharper. So I'm going to go with something like 200. So we have this really nice sharp shape, but it's not looking the way I want it to look. So I'm going to add one more effect called fast blur. And let's increase this to around maybe 60 and repeat each pixel. So it's going to make it more like a reflection, as you can see. Now it doesn't look like a reflection right now, but we are going to fix this later. Let's go back into the logo reflection composition, that is this one. And I can add the reflection composition that we created. So let's drag and drop it. Actually drop this below and change the alpha matte of the reflection composition to alpha matte. So we have something like this. Pretty cool. Maybe I think the offset is a bit too low, so I'm going to go right over here, select the reflection and make sure to select the pattern, and I'm going to just offset it a bit more, just like so. Okay. All right, so far so good. Now what I can do is select the logo year comp and hit Ctrl D on the keyboard to create a new copy, and we can just keep this off for now. Let's make it logo map. So I'm going to call this logo map. Oh, let's actually rename it to logo map. There we go. And onto the reflection, I'm going to use an effect called CC Blobilize, which is a very cool effect. CC Blobilize. And this effect is going to help us to create some nice edges. So let's go into the blobbiness and play around with some different settings. First of all, I'm going to set the blob layer to logo map. So the blobbiness is just around the logo, as you can see, looking pretty good. Then let's set the property from lightness to alpha. And then we can play around with the softness, to which I'm going to set this to 4. And for the cutaway, I don't want any cutaway, so I'm going to bring this down to 0. So now you can see right off the bat, we get this really nice depth in our logo, kind of a bevel alpha effect. Then I can play around with the light if I want to. So I'm going to just play around with the rotation or the direction. So I'm going to set this to around 345. And with the shading, I'm going to increase the ambient to 100. Bring down the diffuse to 0. And everything else I think looks pretty good. So I'm not going to mess around with that. Then let's add an effect called curves to do a little bit of color correction on this one. Just a touch like that. And finally, I'm going to add an effect called CC Light Sweep. For the width, I'm going to just leave it at maybe 60. For the sweep intensity, let's go to around maybe 30 or something like that. For the edge intensity, let's increase this really high, maybe something like 150. And you can always play around with the settings, you don't need to just type in the exact same setting. But I think this settings looks good, so I'm just using them. You can see it looks pretty cool, as you can see. Very, very nice. So this is going to work as a shine on our logo. So let's actually go to around maybe 4 seconds, I think. Create a keyframe on the center. And let's go to 5 seconds, or maybe 5 seconds and 15 frames. And let's drag it just like so. So hit U so we can see the keyframes. F9 to ease those keyframes. So we have this really simple sweep animation, as you can see. Pretty nice. And the last thing that I'm going to do is duplicate the logo map. So hit Ctrl D and let's call this bevel. Make sure to turn this on, and on this one I'm going to add a fill, which is going to be a black fill, and then add an effect called bevel in alpha. Also make sure the blending mode to add. Okay, that is looking good. So now you can see before and after. It's a bit too low, so let's just play around with the settings. So for the thickness, I'm going to leave it at 2, and for the direction, I'm going to set this to light angle to 2. You can see the difference before and after. And yep, everything else looks good. Maybe I'll increase the intensity to 1 so you can see more properly. As you can see, very nice effect. And yeah, pretty much that is the reflection for our logo. So now let's go ahead and start building up our complete scene. So to do that, I'm going to go into the main composition and drag in the logo reflection comp into the main composition, as this is the main reflection logo composition. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty quickly drop in the assets that I will be using in the project. So let's actually call this assets. And the first thing that we need is the smoke revealer. I'm going to drag and drop it onto the top, and let's change the blending mode to screen. So we have this really nice smoke going through. And now what I want is I want my logo to get revealed through the smoke. So to do that, alright, so let's change the blending mode of the logo reflection to Luma Matte. So now you can see the smoke inside the logo, and then I can basically just duplicate this. So hit Ctrl D to duplicate the layer, and now you can see we have something like that, and that is what actually I'm going for. Pretty good. Now let's go to around maybe somewhere around 1 second, I think, and split this up. So select both the layers and hit Ctrl Shift D to split the layers. And then let's actually set this to no track matte and just animate the opacity of this one. So let's go to 2 seconds maybe, or maybe somewhere around there. Let's select the logo reflection, hit T, create a keyframe on the opacity, go back in time. Let's set this to around maybe 30, just trying to match it with the opacity of this one. Yep, that is looking pretty good, as you can see. So it looks like the logo is getting revealed through the smoke. And then we have this animation of the reflection, moving. And at that time, what I want is, let's go to somewhere around there. Select the logo, hit S to bring up the scale properties, create a keyframe, go forward just about there, and let's set this to 1110. All right, let's select this and click on the keyframe wingman. So it's basically gonna create the same curve that we had. Now let's see. So it's not animating according to the animation. Let's fix this. Actually, let's go back into the logo reflection, and you can see our animation is right over here at 2 seconds. So I'm gonna go back into main comp, go to 2 seconds and drag the keyframes back. Let's see. So I'm gonna drag this keyframe right over here. So now you can see we have the logo scaling up. Maybe I think I'll put this to around 90. And same with this one. So hit S. Hit S and set this to 90. So we have this really nice kind of reflection moving it, giving a bit more depth. And then we have the reflection just like so. Pretty cool. So far, so good. Now let's go ahead and add some background smoke. So I'm going to drop the background smoke below. So we have some really nice background smoke. Maybe I'll go to around 1 second. Hit T, create a keyframe, go back in time, and let's set this to 0. So we have a really simple animation, as you can see. Pretty nice. That is looking much better. Let's go ahead and add some particles as well on the top. And same with this one, I'm going to set the blending mode to screen. Go to 1 second, hit T, create a keyframe, go back and set this to 0. Okay, this is looking very nice. Now let's go ahead and do some color correction pretty quick. So let's create a new adjustment layer. I'm going to call this CC for color correction. And then first of all, let's add some sharpen to this, maybe around, so let's add some sharpen to this, maybe around, let's say 10. And then I'm going to add a photo filter. For this one, I'm going to go with the cooling filter 82 preset, set the density to 5, then hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Let's set this to color cooling filter 80 and let's increase the density to 10. And finally, add some brightness and contrast. Maybe I'll increase the contrast a bit to around maybe 5 or something like that. Looks better. And I think I'm going to add a curves as well, just to tweak the colors a bit, make it a bit more majestic, maybe something like that. Okay, so now you can see the animation is looking much better after some color correction, before and after. You can see very, very nice. There we go. And finally, let's add some fade out for our animation. So let's go to 6 seconds, bring up the smoke end right over here below the color correction. Maybe I'll bring this right over here. Let's change the blending mode to screen, and actually let's drag this a bit. Hit T, create a keyframe, go back in time. Let's set this to 0. So we have something like that. Ctrl D to duplicate it, so make it more dense, just like that. Then select both of them, hit Ctrl D, pull them on the top, rotate it by 180 degrees. Select them both and rotate it by 180 degrees, just like so. And there we have something like that. Now I'm going to animate the opacity of our logo. So to do that, let's go right over here maybe and select the logo reflection layer. Hit T, create a keyframe, go to around 7 seconds, maybe somewhere around there. And let's bring this down to 0. So now we have something like that. Looks pretty nice, just a touch. And then let's select them as well. Hit T so we can just see the opacity, create a keyframe,
drag this a bit and let's set this to 0. Also for the smoke revealer, I'm going to do the same. Hit T, create a keyframe on the opacity, drag this back and set this to 0. Let's select all the keyframes and hit F9 to ease those keyframes, and now we should have a nice smooth fade out. Yep, that is looking very nice. All right, so far so good. We are going good. Now let's go ahead and create a new solid, and we will be adding some optical flares to this. So hit Ctrl Y. Let's call this OF for optical flares. Hit OK, change the blending mode to screen and optical flares to this. You can also use the inbuilt lens flare as well, but I like to go with this one like so. And let's make some room, put this below the color correction layer, select this, and I'm going to place it somewhere around there, something like that, and hit Ctrl D, select the second one, and I'm going to place this somewhere around like so. And then let's go to 2 seconds. Let's actually go to 1 second and increase the scale to around 150. This one as well to 150. Create a keyframe on the scale of both the layers. Go back in time, select both the layers, hit U so we can see the properties, and let's bring this down to 0, this one to 0. Then go to around maybe 3 seconds and let's set this to maybe 90 or something like that. Okay, select this, hit F9 to ease those keyframes. So we have this really nice animation. So this is looking much better, I think. And lastly, I'm going to add a vignette to this. So hit Ctrl Y again to create a new solid, call this V for vignette. And let's double click on the ellipse tool to create an ellipse just like that. Invert this, hit F, feather this up to 500 and bring down the opacity to somewhere around there, like 34, 35 looks good. And there we are. There we have our really nice majestic looking logo animation. Looks pretty cool. You can also add a texture behind. I think that would look even more better. But yeah, this is the animation and it's looking very, very nice. Pretty cool. Now lastly, I can go ahead and add some text. So I'll just add some text like this. Align it, maybe set this to around 55. Looking pretty nice. Maybe then animate the opacity of the text. So let's go to around here, hit T to bring down the opacity, create a keyframe, go back, set this to 0, select the keyframes, and I'm going to use the same curve. There we go. Maybe a bit. Yep, so this is looking very, very nice. And there we have our nice professional looking logo animation. Now the best part is that you can always replace this with any logo. So if let's say I use a different logo. So I use this logo, I can go into logo here and drag this logo, hide this one, and bam, there we have our nice logo reveal. So it can work with any logo that you want to use. And yeah, I guess that is all for today.
So that is a wrap for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, make sure to subscribe, comment and like, and I will see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to stay raw, stay creative.